That, and what I really want to know, and if I were to do this with you, Mark, is where are your preferences versus a large number of people? And if I know that there are 1, 2, 3, so the bottom 15 percentile or 8, 9, 10, and I know compared to this huge number of people, this preference is really important to you. And then I know which buckets to open. So psychometric tests take this abstract idea of personality and it puts it on a piece of paper, gives us some tools to say, okay, I have an hour with you. Which buckets do I open and what information do I want to grab from this?
It gives you kind of a framework and some structure and a process and maybe a set of questions. And by the way, we'll take a look. I've printed out all these different reports and I was actually quite impressed. Some of them irritated me, but then they made me smile. We'll take a look at what I'm talking about in just a moment. So here we have the nominative test. So it's basically the same questions, but we have a different reading, right? So if we were to compare, you have here what the ipsative said and versus the nominative, right? Now, what does that tell us? Does it tell us anything or does it not matter?
Can you go to the next slide? Do you see it on the other side as well?
Yeah, this is the second part of it, and this would be here we're closer, which I thought was funny. It almost mirrors it, right?
Yeah.
So here we have.
I asked for the second slide because I want to know in the P.A.P.I ipsative there were strong outliers at the top.
Yeah.
Do they align with your normative or not?
Well, here they pretty much align, right? Okay. On core composure, there's a bit of a gap. In work tempo, there might be a little bit of a gap. But there at least it looks like the same mountain range.
Yeah, which could point towards a few different things. So if P.A.P.I and N are completely different, then some things that are important to you don't really see as preferences at the workplace.
So here, for example, we have bigger differences.
But remember, the P.A.P.I is forces you to choose what's important to you or not.
So for those who haven't taken the test, there's two tests. One test asks you to pick between 3 or 4 different things?
3. Yeah, I think.
Which forces you, when you're looking at 3 different hats, choose which one really has priority. And I remember taking the test. It's sometimes a little bit difficult to make a decision. You just have to suck it up and make the decision, which kind of forces you to to set a ranking of what's important to you. Whereas in the second test is more, how would you describe it?
It's your preference at the workplace. So it's your preferences with each of the buckets.
So it gives you a sentence and says how accurate this from 1 to 5, right? Very accurate, a little accurate, marginally, and then that kind of scale. So that makes a difference. So if we look at the nominative here, in contrast to my ipsative, right? If we look at the first part of that, it's much higher. What does that tell us? Does it tell us anything?
Not necessarily. I'd like to see how you answered the P.A.P.I normative, for example. Were you quite self-inflated or not? Did you mostly choose, yes, that's me? Do you see your preferences in all areas versus not? So the P.A.P.I N and E, to put it next to each other, is a lot of people do put it next to each other, but they are 2 separate tools.
So we'll just look at it this way. I had to play with it and test it. I'm an old graphic freak, so.
It shows, especially if I see a lot of preferences that are in the top 15 percentile, I know that there are very strong preferences, and that could mean various things. And I think this is important when it comes to personality assessments. There are different stories for the same outcome. And often companies go, based on your personality, and I've never spoken to you, you can't have this job.
Okay.
And I don't think that is very fair because your story behind inspirational motivator might be different than somebody else's. There are